Hi there everyone, it's Joe and welcome back to my channel. Now before we get on to the top 10 summons of 2017, there's a couple of things that I did really quickly want to mention. The first of which is the winner of my Opus IV Pre-Release Kit giveaway, which I can now gladly announce is Ross Lang from the UK, funnily enough, so that'll save me on some postage, which would be very, very nice. But congratulations to you, Ross. If you could get into contact with me, I'll be sending you an email as well, just so that you definitely know that you've got it. And then, you know, just send me an email and a response and let me know where to send this lovely product, and then I'll get it to you as quickly as possible. So yeah, well done. Now, as I said, you know, before we get on to the actual list itself, one of the things I wanted to mention is like the past couple of days I've been doing videos that are the top 10 lists of forwards, backups, and now summons. Now the thing that I want to mention and clarify with this list is there is a top 10 list of things that have seen a great deal of play across the entire year, not necessarily right this second. Now, when I did my forwards video, people kind of saw that Emperor wasn't on my list and read me to filth about it. Now, don't get me wrong, Emperor is an exceptionally good card, and people also read me for not having Rinoa on the list, and in all honesty, she could have been on that list, and I probably did kind of overlook her a little bit. She probably could have been in there before Emperor Xander, and that's fine. Regular Emperor, I think, you know, while is very, very potent now, if you look at a large number of the lists that did very, very well in tournaments, whether it be UK Nats, US Nats, Worlds, all of those deck lists, there's actually very, very few copies of Emperor in those decks. And I think the reason for that is that because he's an extremely good card in the matchups where he's very good. He absolutely, you know, demolishes certain matchups, but there are matchups where he's a dead card, and, you know, that, you know, for a dark card that you can't really do a lot with, then that was enough for me to put him not in my list. But that's not to say that he's a bad card. He isn't. He's an extremely good card. I actually really like Emperor as a card. I think it's very, very good, but that was my reason for not putting him on that list as opposed to an oversight. So apologies if people disagree with that, but I had my reasons for not putting him there. And the same goes for this list and of the backups one. So, but one of the things I really like is that I really like it when you guys disagree with me, because it creates discussion, and that's the entire point of these videos. So without further ado, let's go straight into the top 10 summons of 2017. Now my number 10 pick here is a fire card from Opus 2, which is Belias the Gigas. Now Belias, when Opus 2 came out, people kind of saw this card and go, oh my god, this card is really, really strong. And it is. It's a 2 CP forward, but I keep saying forward. It always comes out forward. I did this in my backups video as well, so I'm really sorry about that. So it's a 2 CP summon that draws a card as well as giving you additional effects, which is never a bad start. But being able to give a forward haste, first strike, and 1000 power during combat can actually swing tide in your favour quite heavily. And, you know, it's not, it has good value, it's a great EX burst, it does very, very well. The only problem I have with Belias is that he only boosts power by 1000, which means that the chances are you're only ever going to be able to use it if you're trying to kind of coax your opponent into blocking something that's either a K bigger than you or even with you, so that your first strike actually overrides it. It is quite easy to counter by making, well, their guy bigger, but, you know, the first strike and haste is actually very, very relevant, and it's been seeing a lot of play since its release, so I definitely wanted to put it in the list, at least somewhere. My number 9 pick is one of the very, very large number of really good water summons in the game, and it's Famfrit. Famfrit is a very interesting card because I think that it's a card that some people love it and some people don't, and that's fine. It's a really, but I mean, it's one of my favourite water summons. I think that, you know, sacrifice or like effects that cause the player to lose their own forwards can actually be really powerful in the right hands and in the right shell. And I really, really like Famfrit, especially with the synergy between it and, you know, Water's massive number of cheap forwards that you can just send away after they've done their job, or you can use it on like Pain or Zidane or stuff like that, where you can just replace them, draw more cards, and it kind of just plays into that very, very well. And it's also a really good EX burst, so, you know, because you know, there are times where you won't necessarily want to use it, and that's why it's lower down on the list rather than some of the other cards on here. But I do find that more often than not, it's a card that you're always kind of happy to see in your hand. And in combination with things like Yuna that make it cheaper, I just think it's a great card in general, so I put it at number 9 on this list. Going into another water summon here in the number 8 slot is Cuchulainn the Impure. Now Cuchulainn, like Famfrit, is a card that a lot of people run at 3, some people run 1 or 2 of it, and some people just don't run it at all. But it goes without saying that it's a really, really strong card. You know, it's like Belias, it can swing combat in your favour, and it can do that, you know, it does punish your opponent for overextending very, very, very hard. So if they start playing cards before they start attacking, then you can really punish your opponent for that, because the chances are they're going to have dull backups for doing it. But the reason that Cuchulainn isn't higher on this list is that because I think that the second you see one discarded, or you can kind of make a, educated guess as to whether they're playing it or not, then you can play more reservedly and play around it more. So that's why it's not higher on the list, but even though it's a very, very good summon, and drawing a card after you've played it is just icing on the cake. Number 7 on this list is both versions of Bahamut. Now, the first version of Bahamut, the legendary one, saw a lot of play back in Opus 2 era, although it started to fall down a little bit because Cecil got quite popular, and then it kind of rose up, and then it went down again, and then it rose up again. And now with the new Bahamut, the Opus 4 one, I think that it's finally a fire burn spell that I actually quite like, because it deals enough to deal with 80% of the forwards in the game you're going to be dealing with at 8k, and it does something extra to them as well in removing them from the game when you break them. And it's something that Bahamut does very, very well in general, so having access to both of them is really, really nice. And who knows, maybe because there's 2 of them, maybe Fang will start to see a bit more play, and that would be really cool. But Bahamut in general isn't a card that I particularly like to play, but having looked in deck lists over the course of the year and the potential for the new Bahamut, I wanted to put them at number 7 on this list. Now, number 6 on this list, I bet I'm going to get another bunch of people that are going to go, why is this not higher, why is this not lower? But I'm going to go with it the way it is, and it's the 2 copies of Odin from Opus 1. Now, it goes without saying that 7-drop Odin, having the X-Burst that everybody loves to hate, is reason enough to put him on this list. And if you watch the Worlds coverage, that Odin won the tournament, quite honestly, and it was such a good... It's such a good EX burst, it goes without saying. You just kind of like having it. You don't have to run it. That's the nice thing about these Odins. You don't have to run them. They're just, you can run them in any ratio. The reason that I think that Odin, the 4-drop Odin, is like less of a thing now. I mean, it's been seeing play since the beginning of the game, so it's definitely going to be on this list somewhere. But now that Dragon has become available in the monsters department from Opus 4, 4-drop Odin has definitely started to decline in its play use. But 7-drop Odin still sees a lot of play, so it's definitely worth being on this list. But I've noticed a lot of Lightning decks over the course of time have decided to play other summons, or no summons at all even in some cases, over these 2, but they're still very, very good cards. Number 5 on this list is Hecatoncheir. Now, Hecatoncheir is a very important card to have in this game. This is referring to the Opus 1 Hecatoncheir, because backup destruction is very, very, very rare in this game. There are literally only 4, possibly 5 cards that can do it. I can think of the 2 Sephiroths, Promo and the Legendary Dark, Archer, and which we covered in the last video, and Hecatoncheir. If you can think of any more and I've forgotten any, then definitely say so in the comments, because I'm prone to forgetting things sometimes. But Hecatoncheir is a very important card to have because it fills an avenue that's very, very unexplored. And when there's cards that some backups are some of the most powerful cards in the game, like Minwu, if you're running against a deck that's weak to it, then you're going to want to run away around it, whether it's Archer or Hecatoncheir or something like that. And being an Earth card, it's searchable by way of things like Rydia. It also has really nice synergies with Vanille, which is nice. And the potential for the new Hecatoncheir is incredible. I've tried it myself and I love it. 2 CP for essentially a removal piece that is variable on damage, but it doesn't, like, it doesn't have any X-Burst anyway, so you're never gonna like trigger it by accident and you not want it. But the potential for it for such a cheap card that can deal a hefty amount of damage is awesome. So I look forward to seeing how much play the new Hecatoncheir sees over the course of the next few sets. But both Hecatoncheirs I think are very important to this game as Earth summons that are actually removal in one fashion or another, so they're definitely number 5 on my list here. 5, not 4. Number 4 on my list is Zalera the Death Seraph. Since Zalera came out, it's been seeing play all over the place in various different ratios and numbers. When Opus 2 came out, Matthias saw a lot of play because it was like a removal piece for Vincent because he was popular at the time, and then that fell off because Zalera and Shiva came out. There's a lot of really good ice summons nowadays, and Zalera is one of the better ones because if you're in the right circumstance, you can just board wipe your opponent one-sidedly, and it can do so much work for you. There's not really an awful lot else you can really have to say about it. The only weaknesses are that it doesn't kill 4 CP guys, and that's fine because a lot of the meta had kind of shifted towards 3 CP ones anyway, so to see Zalera this high on the list is not, it shouldn't really be too surprising to anybody. Number 3 on my list is Cyclops. Now Cyclops is the lightning summon of choice for a lot of people nowadays because lightning has a habit of swarming the field very, very quickly by way of things like Alcid, Rigdia, Onion Knight. That combo is pretty much seen in every lightning deck. So to be able to attack with them and make your opponent wonder whether they're actually able to block you or not is really, really potent. So it fits into those deck archetypes really, really well. I've actually seen Cyclops played in a lot of mono water decks that run Garnet recently, which is another card that could have well been in my top 10 forwards, and a lot of people were very surprised not to see her. But I mean, she's one of my favourite cards. And a lot of people have been running Cyclops with her, even though you're not running Lightning, just because you can play it with Garnet's ability, and that swing in power, like their guys drop by 3k, your guys get a k from Garnet, it's huge. So it's like, you know, Overrun in Magic, if anyone plays Magic out there. It's a very similar kind of ability, but because it's instant speed, your opponent doesn't necessarily know it's coming. So that sort of ability is very, very powerful in a game like this. So Cyclops is very, very high up for a very good reason, and I'm not sure if people are actually agree with me on this or whether they think that he should be lower, but he's there, I think that he's there for a reason, and I think he's going to be there for a while to come. My number 2 spot in this list is going to be one that I'm sure a lot of people might actually argue is number 1, and that's Shiva from Opus 3. This Shiva is incredible, quite honestly, and it doesn't have any X-Burst, thank God. But Shiva is a card that honestly, when I first read her, I didn't like her all that much because I get things wrong. And she turned out to be pretty much a minimum of 2 of in every ice deck from that point onwards. I'm not an ice player, you know, in case people weren't aware of that. I don't main ice, as it were, but it's just very, very powerful. Being able to kind of have it so you can play it defensively, so your opponent, if they're going in to try and attack you, you can just go, nope, 2 of your guys are down. Or you can use it offensively. They've got their 2 biggest blockers, you've got 4 guys down, for example. You just go, Shiva, attack you for game. It's that simple. It's a very simple card, and it's very, very effective at what it does. It's going to be around for a while, especially with the new Shiva, which is actually also a very, very good card, and I might do a little feature on her at some point very soon, because dulling your opponent's cards just works. The only way to deal damage in this game is to your opponent is with a forward. So being able to dodge forwards or remove them and stop them from hitting you is very, very powerful, and we're going to be seeing Shiva for a while. Now before I get onto my number 1 slot, I do want to make an honourable mention, and there are a lot of good summons in this game. Like backups and forwards, there's a ton of good cards in this game. One of the things I like about this game is the fact that there's such a wide variety of good cards, but I wanted to turn attention to Syldra, as it's one of my favourite summons in the game, and it's one that I've seen a lot of people play over the past few months. When Opus 3 came out, people weren't necessarily too keen on it. I really liked it, but I didn't see it in a lot of tournament lists. But as time progressed, it became more and more popular, but it started to dip back down again recently. But I think Syldra, especially if you can make it 5 CP by way of Yuna, is very, very powerful for very much the same reason as 2-drop Shiva, except it's a slightly more permanent solution for a higher cost. So I do think that it's very, very strong, but the trouble with it is that there are so many good water summons that finding room for one that doesn't have any X-Burst can be quite difficult at times. But I think Syldra definitely deserves to at least be mentioned on this list, even if it's not on the list itself. And then finally, my number 1 pick for Summon of the Year, as it were, is a Leviathan from Opus 1. Now, Leviathan has seen play since the dawn of the game. It's still seeing play now. Mono Water is probably the most popular colour in the game right now. Certainly, just as a deck archetype, it's very, very powerful. And Leviathan, very much like Shiva, very much like, well, obviously very much like Syldra, is just a way of removing your opponent's forward at any time. And, you know, it has no restriction, unlike Odin, the 4 CP Odins, or Dragon, or anything like that. It has no restriction on its removal. So for 3 CP, you can, you know, at least temporarily remove any forward out of the game for a while. And that can be very, very powerful, either offensively or defensively, as was the case with Shiva. But I think the only reason that I've put this at number 1 is because of its colour, more than anything else. In Water, having access to Yuna and making it a 2 CP card is huge. In, you know, being able to bounce your opponent's guys and have them have to replay it again, it goes very, very well with Water's I have more resources than you kind of shtick. And it's been in practically every Water deck since the dawn of the game. So it had to be number 1 for me, purely because of its like long-lasting appeal more than anything else. Shiva is also very, very strong. Picking between those two was very, very hard, but I ultimately gave the edge to Leviathan purely because of how long it's been around and how long it's still continuing to see play to this day. And that is it for my top 10 summons of 2017. I do want to re-mention congratulations to Ross on his win for the Opus IV pre-release kit, and I will be getting in touch with you soon. And again, thank you very much for watching. As always, I'm very much appreciating all of the love that I get on these videos and stuff, and as long as I'm creating discussions and giving people something to think about, then that's my job done, basically. So thanks again, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And we're just coming into 2018 now, and there's some lovely things planned for the year going forward. And hopefully I will speak to you all again soon. So thanks very much. Bye.